They may have admitted to killing their parents, but the truth of their case is still coming out. These are the things no one told you about Erik and Lyle Menendez. After numerous complicated trials, Erik and Lyle were found guilty of their parents' murder and received a life sentence with no chance of parole. And while the law considered them equally responsible for the crime, Erik was generally considered the ringleader and instigator. During the siblings' 1995 retrial, prosecutors presented a recording of Lyle telling psychologist Dr. L. Jerome Ozel that he blamed his brother for the death of their mother. He stated, "There was no way I was going to make a decision to kill my mother without Erik's consent. I didn't even want to influence him in that issue." Erik and Lyle were the ones who told the police about their parents' deaths, and they weren't initially suspects. They were arrested 6 months into the investigation, but Netflix's The Menendez Brothers documentary revealed their conviction may have gone very differently if that had happened earlier.
And if they would have just pressed me, I wouldn't have been able to withstand any questioning. I was in a completely broken and shattered state of mind.
In the 1990s, it was commonplace for TV networks to air made-for-television movies and miniseries about true crime events as they unfolded. The Menendez brothers' story made for perfect drama, and 2 major networks at the time rushed to produce projects about the case. CBS planned to air the miniseries Menendez, A Killing in Beverly Hills, and Fox prepared the television film Honor Thy Father and Mother, the true story of the Menendez murders. Lyle's public defenders in the retrial asked the U.S. District Court judge to block Fox from showing the movie at all. They reasoned that it was allegedly filled with incorrect information and was biased in the prosecution's favor. Erik's lawyer, Leslie Abramson, joined Lyle's attorneys in publicly denouncing the CBS limited series. They argued that both of the productions could have been particularly harmful if they were shown in the Los Angeles area, as they could influence the minds of potential jurors in the upcoming retrial. Despite these protests, both the show and movie aired as scheduled. Erik and Lyle claimed to have used 2 12-gauge shotguns to carry out their parents' murders. And while prosecutors were able to build enough of a case to get them convicted, the murder weapons were never actually found. As early as 1990, investigators found evidence that the brothers purchased the firearms at a San Diego gun store, and an associate of the family once found a shotgun shell casing in Lyle's jacket pocket.
There were shells, gun shells, in my car. My car was inside the search area.
But even after Erik and Lyle claimed they'd abandoned the shotguns somewhere on Los Angeles' Mulholland Drive, they still couldn't be found. Over 3 decades later, the guns still haven't turned up. For years, the media has strongly implied that Erik and Lyle were in a romantic relationship with each other. Netflix's Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, fed these rumors, depicting the brothers getting very physically affectionate with one another. Viewers criticized the show on social media for taking such a creative leap, and some called it an exploitation of the victims of sexual abuse. Crime reporter Robert Rand has done a lot of work reporting on the Menendez brothers case, and told The Hollywood Reporter he thinks that the incest angle the show took was another reporter's doing. Crime writer Dominic Dunn had also done a lot of work surrounding the Menendez murders, and Rand believes the rumors may have been his brainchild. Rand went on to claim that the only physical contact that might have occurred between them happened when they were kids. Lyle testified that he assaulted Erik as a child. After they were convicted, Erik and Lyle resided in the same incarceration facility but weren't allowed to interact. They may have seen each other at a distance from time to time, but they were eventually sent to separate prisons after receiving their life sentences.
We thought we were going to go to the same prison. They put him in one van, and I didn't understand why they were putting me in another van.
Erik served many years at Folsom State Prison north of Sacramento, California, and Lyle wasn't far away at the Mule Creek State Prison. And while they were relatively close geographically, they were almost entirely cut off from talking to one another. They couldn't use their telephone privileges to speak with each other, so they became pen pals. They also played chess via mail, writing down their moves and sending them back and forth. In 2013, Erik was transferred to the R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility near San Diego, and 5 years later, Lyle joined him. The pair teared up when they saw each other face-to-face for the first time, and they now see each other regularly. In 2025, their bids for resentencing were finally approved, so they may see even more of each other at hearings, or even as free men in the future. As the Menendez brothers' murder case played out in the media, comedian Rosie O'Donnell advocated for them on CNN's Larry King Live. She said that she believed Lyle's testimony that he helped murder his parents to fight back against years of sexual abuse by his father.
As a child who grew up in a house that was unsafe for children, I related a lot to the boy's testimony.
Lyle heard about this and sent O'Donnell a letter of thanks. She ultimately ignored the letter as her colleague Barbara Walters warned her against responding, having interviewed the brothers herself. But in 2022, a new documentary about the Menendez brothers came out. It revealed possible evidence that they were sexually abused by their father, an idea that was largely overlooked in their original trials. O'Donnell started publicly supporting Erik and Lyle again, and they began corresponding. She told Variety, "We talk a lot. I told them I would do what I could with whatever dwindling fame I have to bring light to their story. O'Donnell's endorsement may have played a considerable role in getting their fight for new sentences on track. Given that neither of the Menendez brothers were involved in the making of Monsters, it doesn't take much imagination to think the showrunners took some liberties in their depiction of Erik and Lyle's lives and crimes. In fact, Erik thought that co-creator Ryan Murphy and his collaborators so egregiously misrepresented the events they depicted that he released a statement on his wife's X account. He expressed his frustration with how unfairly he believes the show portrays Lyle in particular and wrote, "It is with a heavy heart that I say I believe Ryan Murphy cannot be this naive and inaccurate about the facts of our lives so as to do this without bad intent." While the Menendez family name will forever be associated with a heinous murder case, the boys at the center of the crime made their mark on the athletic world first. A few years before Lyle and Erik took their parents' lives, they were well known in the elite youth tennis circuit. When they were 9 and 12, their father Jose ordered them to focus on one of the many sports they each played. Both picked tennis, and their parents responded with overwhelming support. They hosted a live-in tennis coach in 1988 and 1989, and hired adult players as practice partners for Lyle and Erik. According to Community News, Jose was extremely invested in his son's tennis careers and would regularly weigh in at matches and during lessons with other coaches. Lyle played in a pretty serious tournament at the Orange Bowl in Florida, but was quickly beaten by another competitor. For his part, Erik was once ranked the 44th best tennis player in the U.S.'s 18 and under division. He'd ultimately remove his father from his coaching staff, but suffered a major loss at a tournament without him. Whether you believe Erik and Lyle's claims or not, a lot of people believe the Menendez family has kept some secrets over the years, and one of the few that may have been confirmed involves Lyle's hair. Lyle testified that his mother pulled off his toupee during a heated fight just days before her death. Upon seeing this, Erik allegedly comforted his brother and then confided that their father was abusing him. They reportedly attempted to confront Jose together, but he threatened them in response. The wig itself looked convincingly real, and no one expected a man in his early 20s to be bald underneath what appeared to be a pretty thick mop of hair. The truth behind Lyle's toupee only became widespread knowledge when an inmate at the Los Angeles County Jail sent it flying in the shower. As prison rules prohibit inmates from wearing wigs, Lyle was only permitted to wear his in the courtroom. This may seem like a minute detail compared to other rumors about the brothers, but that hairpiece could represent a whole world of unturned stones in the Menendez case. By all appearances, Lyle and Erik Menendez seemed to live an idyllic life. Their father, 45-year-old Jose Menendez, was a self-made Cuban immigrant who went from Manhattan dishwasher to West Coast film executive. At age 19, he tied the knot with Kitty, who was 2 years his senior. The Menendezes lived in a posh New Jersey country estate before Jose's career made it necessary for them to relocate to a mansion in California. Aside from enrolling the brothers at an expensive private school, Jose also paid for thrice-weekly tennis coaching sessions in order for the brothers to excel at their chosen sport. Unfortunately, neither Erik nor Lyle seemed to share their father's itching, burning need to succeed. From Lyle's academic difficulties to the brothers burglarizing their own neighborhood, Jose's frustration allegedly reached the point where he all but eliminated his children from his will. Judging by how Lyle supposedly deleted a copy of this will from Jose's home computer by mistake, this may have been one of the major catalysts for the crime. Based on Erik's own recollection, their relationship with their father was far from healthy. In a weird, twisted way, Erik admired Jose, even as he constantly controlled, pressured, and pushed him and his brother to their limits. Perhaps Lyle, in an interview with ABC News published in 2017, said it best, "I found that my own childhood prepared me surprisingly well for the chaos of prison life." The night of their parents' murder, the police headed to the Menendez residence after receiving the brothers' 911 call. According to some accounts, the sight of a bawling Erik Menendez curled up on the front lawn greeted the officers. Upon entering the mansion, they witnessed a crime scene so brutal they thought it was the mob's handiwork. When Sergeant Tom Edmonds of the Beverly Hills Police Department spoke with the brothers that night, they already had an alibi prepared. After seeing a movie, they went to a food festival, came home sometime before midnight, and stumbled upon their parents' bodies in the den. Lyle also mentioned that when they entered their home, he caught a whiff of shotgun smoke. Despite the strange and somewhat inconsistent detail, as the smoke couldn't have lingered that long, Edmonds found the brothers' testimonies and trauma so believable he didn't ask them to undergo testing for gunshot residue. In other words, Lyle and Erik successfully lied and cried their way out of trouble that night. In hindsight, considering how the younger Menendez's acting skills earned him recognition at Beverly Hills High, that wasn't entirely surprising. Days later, Lyle hired armor-clad bodyguards for his and Erik's protection, which further sold their story. After they served their purpose, Lyle fired them without batting an eyelash. One would think that the best way for the only heirs of a $14 million estate to get away with murder would be to keep things low-key. Well, that just wasn't how the Menendez brothers rolled. After some rather convincing public displays of grief and pain, it didn't take long for them to dip their hands deep into the $1 million Menendez cookie jar. In the months that followed, the brothers blew their insurance payout on a gambling spree, high-end hotel rooms, condominiums in the posh Marina Del Rey area, 3 Rolex watches, a $40,000 shopping spree on clothing, and a $64,000 gray Porsche Carrera. In addition, Erik Menendez purchased a Jeep Wrangler and booked a $60,000 a year tennis coach to further his pro-athlete aspirations, while Lyle Menendez reportedly plunked down $550,000 on a New Jersey restaurant that students frequented for its popular chicken wings. Lyle also set up a company, Menendez Investment Enterprises, with which he intended to penetrate the hospitality, entertainment, and real estate industries. He even invested $40,000 in a Los Angeles rock concert, an endeavor that ultimately failed when his associate bailed on him.
Some estimates say that in the first 6 or 7 months after the deaths, they spent $1 million.
In 1988, a year before the gruesome death of his parents, Erik Menendez and his tennis pal Craig Signorelli churned out a 60-plus page screenplay titled Friends. The script featured the lead character, a wealthy teenager named Hamilton Cromwell, killing his parents to receive his inheritance. While the screenplay itself wasn't exactly Hollywood-worthy material, it unsurprisingly became relevant to the investigation. After all, the events in the script paralleled the real-world crime in which the author's own parents were the victims. In a 2017 ABC News interview, Signorelli noted the unnerving similarities between the opening scene of their screenplay and how the Menendez brothers ended the lives of their parents. Signorelli also revealed that Erik trusted his best bud so much, the younger Menendez confessed to him about the crime, sharing even the gory, hyper-specific details of what transpired that night. The truth turned out to be so horrifying, Signorelli was secretly hoping for Erik to tell him that it was all a joke. Due to the Menendez brothers' aforementioned knack for thrill-seeking thievery, the court ordered Erik Menendez to see Dr. L. Jerome Oziel, a Beverly Hills psychologist. Killing their parents took a toll on Erik's mental health, one that his confession to Craig Signorelli was not enough to address. He ended up telling Oziel about it as well, and when Lyle Menendez found out, he was understandably incensed. The older Menendez brother threatened to silence Oziel permanently if word got out about their guilt. After almost 5 months since their parents' murder, this proved to be the brothers' downfall. Judalon Smith, Oziel's estranged mistress who knew about the recordings, reached out to law enforcers to tell them about the taped confessions. Los Angeles cops arrested Lyle on March 8, 1990 in Beverly Hills, and Erik surrendered to the LAPD on March 11th. The brothers essentially roamed free for nearly 7 months after the double parricide. Under normal circumstances, the law would render the recorded sessions inadmissible in court, honoring the confidentiality clause between therapists and their clients. However, Lyle's rage-fueled death threat voided the doctor-client privilege of the parties involved. Still, it took 2 years before the Supreme Court of California permitted 2 of the 3 tapes to serve as evidence in the brothers' subsequent trial. Long before YouTube channels, police procedural television shows, and Netflix could feed our hunger for true crime stories, there was the Courtroom Television Network, Court TV, a cable television channel established in 1991 that specialized in crime-themed programming and broadcasts of legal proceedings. When Court TV started airing the Menendez brothers' trial on July 20, 1993, audiences in the United States eagerly tuned in to the historic moment. Due in large part to the tragic details of the case, people at the time couldn't stop talking about it. According to network founder Steve Brill, the trial showed that even without star power, sheer drama is enough to keep viewers glued to their screens. Aside from the brothers, another key player was their attorney, Leslie Abramson. At the time, she had already gained notoriety as a particularly ferocious defense lawyer. The Los Angeles Times even wrote about her peers' admiration and respect for her abilities. Among the most significant and shocking developments in the trial was the revelation that Jose Menendez allegedly harassed and assaulted the brothers. The defense team depicted Jose as a violent, abusive father and an unfaithful husband, while also accusing Kitty of substance abuse and neglect.
Did your mother have tantrums or rages?
Yes.
In the end, however, the defense team could not present undeniable proof of any of these allegations. From an outsider's perspective, the Menendez brothers' case may seem like an easy one. After all, the sheer amount of evidence should realistically be enough for the jury to reach a decision, right? Well, not exactly. Lyle and Erik Menendez underwent separate trials, with each of them having their own jury. Both of these initial proceedings, however, ended in mistrials in 1994, as the juries could not come up with a single verdict for either case. 1 year later, the Menendez brothers' retrial took place under just a single jury. This time around, however, they no longer had the nation's full attention. For starters, the presiding judge, Stanley Weisberg, prohibited cameras in the courtroom. Additionally, there was significantly less time spent on the abuse angle, and the jurors were made to vote on whether to convict the brothers of murder, not the lesser offense of manslaughter. And of course, there was the fact that their retrial happened at around the same time as another high-profile trial, former NFL player O.J. Simpson's.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Ultimately, the jury reached a guilty verdict on March 20th, 1996, but spared the brothers from the death penalty. Lyle and Erik received an arguably more lenient punishment, 2 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. The noteworthy developments in the lives of Lyle and Erik Menendez definitely didn't end at their incarceration, though. A rather fascinating anecdote from ex-New York Mafia captain Michael Franzese revealed that the former mob boss actually encountered the brothers during his time at the Los Angeles County Jail. According to Franzese, he was able to speak with the brothers about their case while he was detained there. Throughout their conversations, the brothers allegedly maintained their innocence, even though the other inmates didn't seem to believe their story. Franzese even noted that the prisoners particularly hated the brothers for their crime, often hurling threats of violence and even death at them as they walked into the visiting area. The reformed mobster also shared that at one point, officers kept Lyle and Erik in separate cells upon discovering the brothers' alleged escape plan. It was during this time that Franzese got to know Lyle a bit more, who he described as, quote, a pretty intelligent kid. Interestingly enough, being behind bars didn't put a damper on the Menendez brothers' love lives. Lyle Menendez's first marriage was to Anna Erickson, a former model and salon receptionist who reportedly felt drawn to Lyle after noticing that Erik Menendez was getting more of the spotlight. After a brief letter turned into an ongoing exchange, Erickson relocated to Los Angeles from Colorado, eventually marrying her pen pal. Based on the records from the California Department of Corrections, Lyle got married to Erickson in the men's central jail in Los Angeles on July 2, 1996. However, Erickson found out that Lyle was writing to other women, including his eventual second wife, Rebecca Sneed. As a result, the couple divorced in 2001. Sneed, a former magazine editor from Sacramento, had actually met Lyle a decade earlier. They got married on November 20, 2003. Meanwhile, Erik also got to know the love of his life, Tammy Rue Sacamon, as a pen pal. The regular correspondence led to them meeting face-to-face. It was during one of Sacamon's visits when Erik proposed to Sacamon on bended knee. Sacamon married Erik on June 12, 1999 at the California State Prison. They even co-wrote and edited a book about their marriage. It took a grand total of 7 years before Jose and Kitty Menendez obtained justice for their brutal deaths. By the time they received their life sentences, Lyle Menendez was already 28 years old, while Erik Menendez was 25. For more than 2 decades, the brothers were incarcerated in separate facilities. Erik served his sentence at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego County, while Lyle began his prison life at Northern California's Mule Creek State Prison.
If we're not put in the same prison, there's a good probability I will never see him again.
Despite the fact that they both received double life sentences, Erik told People in a 2005 interview that he was still working on his appeal, as he believed that he did not deserve to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Reports say that the brothers filed multiple transfer requests over the years. Regardless, it was only in 2018 when Lyle was finally transferred to Erik's housing unit in San Diego. When the brothers laid eyes on each other for the first time in 22 years, they reportedly burst into tears.